Welcome to Hope Talks, Conversations for Special Needs Families. This is a space where we talk about challenges that families face, and we provide information and resources that will help you not just now, but also into the future. I'm Julie Cadman, your host and co-founder of Healing Complex Kids, as well as the co-author of Pathway to Hope Resource Guide for Special Needs. Today, we're going to be talking about SSI, what it is, how you get it, and once you get it, how you safely keep it, because there are so many nuances to this program. Joining me is Nicole Grabowski, who is a case manager, medical specialist, rehabilitation. Am I leaving something out?
I am a rehabilitation counselor, a medical case manager. I am a brain injury specialist, and I am somebody who is blessed to be able to raise 3 children with special needs.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about the brain injury stuff. My brain did not hold it. I'm really excited to have you here today. Thank you for joining us, Nicole.
It is my pleasure.
We are going to cover SSI and disability benefits and the process of navigating both of these programs today. So Nicole, what exactly is SSI? What does it stand for, and what is it?
Okay, so SSI is Social Security Insurance. So it is under the federal umbrella in regards to disability benefits. So there's 2 parts to any type of Social Security Administration handling for any type of disability. There's SSDI, which is Social Security Disability Insurance, and SSI. SSDI is based on work history, but SSI is actually an income-based for individuals with a disability. This program also includes childhood disability benefits, which for some individuals, they can obtain both the childhood disability benefits and their SSI benefits. Along with that, being qualified for these programs also allows you to get the Medicare, Medicaid that is so vital for all of our individuals.
Girl, my head is spinning with all you just said. Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
It is a lot.
So you're going to help us slowly break this down for families and say, here's how, okay, a lot of our families, they need to understand, how do I get SSI, or how do I prepare? When we start thinking, how do I prepare? What do they need to do? Is there a checklist? Let's kind of talk through that.
So there's absolutely a checklist. It's a checklist that I will be providing after this podcast. But the number one thing to remember is to be prepared. You always know your individual you're working with. So you want to go ahead and have all of the documentation. The number one reason individuals don't get approved for Social Security benefits is they don't have the documentation. Doctors don't follow through like our dedicated parents do. So you want to make sure that you have copies, you're able to provide them. But as you're looking towards getting any of these benefits, you're going to want to understand how these individuals are affected and why do they need this disability benefit. So that means as you're going to these doctors, these specialists, you're going to want to know, how is my individual going to be affected? And there's 2 main categories that they look at. How does their disability affect their ability to work and function? Now, that's not only just physical. A lot of us forget that it's sometimes that cognitive part where they don't know how to appropriately act in the workplace. They don't know, how is this going to affect them? How or why can't they work? It might be because they have a medical treatment that has to be done every 3 months. All of those things you're going to want to have documented, and you're going to want to feel comfortable explaining them when they go through that process.
Grab your copy of Pathway to Hope Resource Guide for Special Needs on Amazon. It's a roadmap filled with strategies, tools, and encouragement to help your family thrive. So let me interject really quickly. What you made me think about is there's 2 schools of thoughts here. Mm-hmm. One is, as you're documenting this information, I've been told you document the absolute worst day possible. And then I've also been told, hey, you need to look at a whole month or a couple months, because no child or young person is as horrible as that worst day every day, but just to get that understanding. How do you recommend? How do we help parents with that?
You want to look at the overall child or individual. Now, you absolutely need to think of the worst days, because the worst days are going to affect how that individual is. But you want to look at how do they function over a day, over a week, over a month. Because remember, work is not just a one-day situation. It might be over several months. It might be a mental illness that our individuals may be dealing with. And that has a cyclical type of situation where they might be good for 6 months, but then there might be a downturn where they can't function for 2 to 3 months or need that hospitalization. So you want to look at the individual both ways. You want to always know what is the worst that they have, but also what can they function long term.
Well, and we have some families, like you said, their child may have some medical issues where they have to go to the doctor frequently. Mm-hmm. And is that something that can be brought into the equation so that the employer will understand, hey, they're going to need to miss a week, a month? How many employers will allow that, right?
Okay, so that's kind of a different conversation, and I think we're going to have to do a whole new broadcast on the Americans with Disabilities Act. Because when you're getting Social Security, they're just looking at, can you actually obtain and maintain employment with your current disabilities?
So let me back you up. Mm-hmm. Repeat that again, because that's really important. Because again, there's so many things. We're going to do multiple podcasts, but there's so many things. So repeat what you just said.
So when you're looking at an accommodation, that's under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so that, a lot of times we can work with the employers to get things to happen. But when you're looking at the Social Security disability benefits, they look at just, can you obtain and maintain employment? And that's what they're going to determine based on your disability, your needs at that point.
And they're also going to come back periodically to verify if you still need the benefit.
Absolutely. Those are called continuing disability reviews. And that is done on a cycle. Now, if your individual has certain medical or psychological issues, Social Security will determine if the review is once a year, every 3 years, every 5 years. In some cases, it's every 10 years. That's why that documentation is so important that you obtain it. I always say, don't just handle that you're going to go to a portal and pull things up. Because even within a portal, there's 2 different types of documentation. There's the medical note, and then there's the doctor's notes.
Grab your copy of Pathway to Hope Resource Guide for Special Needs on Amazon. It's a roadmap filled with strategies, tools, and encouragement to help your family thrive. And then let's talk about the doctor's notes, because that has burned people in the past. Tell people what that is. This is
absolutely. So the medical note is what is submitted to their actual provider, your healthcare insurance, Medicare, Medicaid. But when you're looking at making a determination of somebody's medical abilities or inabilities and limitations, you're going to want to have the doctor's notes. What was communicated in that appointment? What wasn't communicated in that appointment? What answers or long-term things they need to look at? So say, for example, when you're going in and talking to these doctors, the number one tip I give to everyone is have your own outline. Have your list of questions. And when that doctor walks in, you hand that to them so that they don't leave that room without answering all of those questions, or at least having a plan for it. And that's what's going to be in the doctor's notes, and that's what's most important.
Well, we've had families that we've actually helped that later they have found out that the doctor's notes did not explain what they've actually talked about. So it can be a real issue. Maybe they went in with the list, but the doctor did not put information on there. So this is a great opportunity to make sure that your concerns are being addressed by getting the doctor's notes.
Absolutely. You want to make sure that the record is a true picture of the individual that you're working with. So that may be reviewing the notes afterwards and saying, oh, this wasn't documented, or, oh, now I have another question, and following up with the doctor's office very quickly, not waiting for a year later going, oh, I wish I would have done this or that. It is okay to have an open dialogue with your medical providers. That way you can ensure that you're getting the best picture of who your individual really is.
So why is it important to have SSI?
Well, there's two parts to SSI. One is a cash benefit, and that cash benefit is something that the individual would have that they can utilize for many different needs. Additionally, it gives you the resources of the Medicare and Medicaid, where they'll have that medical insurance, because we all know that medical costs can be more than what any other costs are. So the cash payment is one that comes once a month. It is reviewed per year in regards to an increase. It's that fun COLA word that a lot of people hear on the news. Mm-hmm. And then they also have that stability, that they have that income. And something you can do, because a lot of families panic and say, well, they can only have so many things in an asset. Well, another one of the podcasts that I can come help with is called an identities trust. These amenities trusts is something where you can save for extra medical costs, or for the individual to save up for a car, for travel, with all of these things, but still get those benefits that are so crucial.
There's something else, and it's called CDB. What does that stand for? We have a lot of acronyms here.
Okay. Social Security loves acronyms. Absolutely. But the CBD is a childhood disability benefit.
Stop. I said C. Is it CDB or CBD?
Childhood disability benefit.
I got it right.
Yes, you did.
I've been trying hard.
Yes. So that benefit is so amazing, because that's an additional benefit. And that's based on the parent's income. Oh. So it can be up to half of what the parent's disability or retirement might be. The crucial part of that is applying before the age of 22.
I was going to ask you the question, what's the magic number?
Yes.
So everybody needs to hear 22. Do everything before 22 if you possibly can, right?
Absolutely. I actually say do everything before they're 21, because it can take quite a long time to get approved. And if you're going back and forth and you're having to get more documentation or more things reviewed, you want to have that extra time.
So let me back you up. What if you have a child or young adult who appears to be functioning fairly well, but they still have some deficits and they're just on the border? Because we get calls from families who say, oh my gosh, I'm not sure. Should I go forward? Should I not? Would you advise they go ahead and go forward before they're 21, or what would you say?
Absolutely. Go ahead and see what benefits that they qualify for. But there's also a great program with Social Security called the Ticket to Work program.
Oh, we're going to have a big meeting on that one. It's another big program, yes.
And it's a wonderful program that allows your individuals to trial work, to see could they maintain it. And so that's a crucial benefit, that you're going to give a safety net for your individuals, because Social Security does not have to be a lifelong commitment. You have the opportunity to give them that independence if they need it. But having those benefits in regards to your medical are so crucial.
And here's like a kind of a back-end question with regards to medical. If someone gets Ticket to Work and now they're suddenly going forward, don't they have another 2 years where they would be on Medicaid before they fall off Medicaid, or is there a time frame?
So here's the great part. When you're on just SSI or SSDI, your Medicare, Medicaid can actually extend 5 years.
Wow, that's even longer than I thought.
Absolutely. So there's so many little nuances to the program, and that will be another podcast that we'll really enjoy doing.
So I recently was talking with a family, and they have a young adult who was kind of borderline. Should they go forward? Should they not? And the family said, well, we have means. We don't need to do this. However, the young adult is 25 right now. So they've got 1 more year they can be on their parents' insurance.
Mm-hmm. And you want to make sure that you're giving them the opportunity. With SSI, there is the option and the opportunity where they can have some earnings. They can do that. The benefit has this great magic math that Social Security utilizes, but that is something where they can have that opportunity, where they have that protection. You can always have personal insurance while still having Medicare, Medicaid. So there's so many different components to that, that if you at least give them the opportunity to have it and to have them qualified, they don't always have to accept it if it's not needed.
Wow. My head's swimming. I just learned a lot of new information. Thank you. Grab your copy of Pathway to Hope Resource Guide for Special Needs on Amazon. It's a roadmap filled with strategies, tools, and encouragement to help your family thrive. So in a quick nutshell, what is the difference between SSI and CDB?
Okay, so the childhood disability benefit is based on the SSDI program, which is a different program than the SSI. SSI is what they consider needs-based. Okay. So that would be the income need. And it's not based on the income of the parent. Once that child turns 18, it's on the individual's income, not the family income.
That is huge, because a lot of parents maybe have tried to get help and they've been told you make too much money, and now suddenly they need to have, this is probably one of the most important things we can tell them when they turn 18, it's their income, no longer the family's income.
Absolutely. And I always suggest the month before they turn 18, really look at, do they need this benefit? Is it going to be important? Because some medical insurances now are even limiting individuals to maintain children on their medical insurance if they're not in school full time. And with a lot of our individuals, that's not a reasonable expectation. And so we want to make sure that we're giving them every opportunity and every support to maintain the best medical care they can.
So let's talk about, how do you get SSI? What are the steps? What do families need to know?
Okay. First step, prepare your information. There's a great checklist in regards to everything you need to know. Social Security is going to look at a couple different levels of things that they want to evaluate. Now, the first basic one is called an IDL, which is an independent activity of daily living. This would be somebody who has issues with bathing, showering. But don't just think about, well, they can shower themselves, but are you having to cue them? Would they wait 2.5 weeks before they took a shower and lost their job? Can they take medications? Well, they might be able to independently take medications, but do they know how to get them prescribed? Do they know how to refill them? Do they know simple things such as, when do I take a Tylenol versus when do I take a stomach medication?
Or how do I call the doctor to get an appointment? Are they able to do that? Can they function? Okay.
And then there's something called activities of daily living. So this is more of a high level functioning. Can they pay bills independently? Do they need somebody to be what we call a payee? And that is an individual that would supervise all of that income coming in from Social Security. Social Security absolutely protects families and the individuals so that they have somebody responsible with that income. I know from personal experience, my son would have every Digimon and Pokemon thing ever in his house before he might buy groceries that week. So,
it's like, I've got money, I'm going to spend it.
Absolutely. So you have a lot of safeguards there, and you want to make sure that you're giving them that true information that, yes, could they use a debit card, but they can't budget, or they can't look at life insurance or medical insurance. Can they independently go to the doctor? Transportation. And one key point about transportation is, it's one thing to say, well, they can't get a driver's license, but could they be safe on a bus? Could they be safe out in the community getting public transportation? Just because they can get physically on a bus and off, It's much different riding a school bus than it is public transportation. So those are the types of things you want to start evaluating for your individual. Start doing activities with them. Get on a bus with your child. Watch them. Watch how they interact, how they communicate with people. You want to really know what is important to them so that you can say this is what their ability is or is not. Then they want to look at occupationally. So that's that job. What type of job could they do and could they maintain it? Maintaining is just as important. It's one thing to be great in an interview, but if you don't know how to have those social skills, getting up and getting to work on time, not calling in sick because you stayed up all night playing a video game, you want to make sure that those things are in their ability to be independent. So you're going to look at that. They also look at your medical. You need to be preparing all of your medical, making sure it's correct, making sure that you keep a detailed listing of what hospitalizations have happened, what types of things have happened to the child when they were younger.
Medical interactions, if they have allergies, they have to know and be able to articulate and self-advocate.
Absolutely. Could they safely be admitted to a hospital? Would they know what to say, what not to say?
When you say safely admitted, what do you mean by that?
So when you go in and you get that first admittance, could they describe their symptoms? Do they know how to give their medical insurance? Do they know what they have taken, what they haven't taken? Do they know what medical conditions that they have and what possible complications that they need to tell the doctor about? Because you don't want to just rely on a portal that may or may not have been updated. You want to make sure, could they communicate what they need when they went in there?
Okay, so this is a teaser for a future podcast because you told me you could spend 4 podcasts just talking about Medicaid. Real quick, difference between SSI and difference between Medicaid.
Okay. SSI is the actual disability payment. That includes the cash payment and the associated benefits with that. Medicaid is a income-based health insurance, and that is actually a federal benefit. But what most people don't know is it's actually managed by the states. So you're going to be working with the Department of Health and Human Services on that Medicaid. So that's kind of why we have so many podcasts, how to work with them and how to get those additional benefits. So it's quite a different arena when you're dealing with the federal versus the state levels.
It's quite a process, whatever area you're in.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So let's bring it back to the very basics. This can seem so overwhelming for families. They don't know where to go, what to do. They don't know how to start. They're overwhelmed. Are there maybe trusted agencies they can talk to? And what is that first step?
Okay. First step is knowing who your child or adult is. You want to have all that information together.
When you say who they are or what do you mean by that?
Well, what their abilities or limitations might be, because you're going to be communicating and advocating on their behalf.
So we need a strong list of the strengths and the weaknesses and how they deal with every day.
Absolutely. How could they obtain and maintain employment? That's a good thing to keep in the back of your mind. Now, there's several agencies that do assist with applying. A lot of families, that's not financially possible. And so you want to first know what is needed, and then you can make that application. But don't get frustrated if you don't get approved the first time. A lot of times it's just missing information. It is something that they want additional information on. So you want to keep going.
Well, and we've had conversations in the past that 90%, I have 2 things, 90% of people fail the first time. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest reasons is what? I think this is very interesting.
Missing information.
From your medical doctor.
Absolutely. And everybody thinks, well, they sent it over. They asked for all the information. But unless you are knowing what they sent over, was it the correct notes? And was it a complete picture? So the important thing is to know what documentation was sent over to Social Security. You yourself, as the advocate, can send and submit all of these things to Social Security. And you want to make sure that you're expediting the process, because if a doctor takes too long to submit information, then they'll just kick it back as a denial. So you want to know what information was sent, what did it include, and how quickly was it sent? Because they just send a fax over. So Security is not following up. They don't have the manpower to be able to get all of that information and continually follow up. So you want to be that advocate for your individual.
Well, and it's hard. It is hard because of the manpower issues to get through to Social Security. I know that. Secondly, what I think is really neat about this is just talked to a family recently where they got approved the first time. The mother had all of the information. She had gotten doctor's notes. She had all of it ready. And she was documenting this for a year before her child turned 18. So she was ready. She got approved the first time. And that's
Absolutely
unusual. But it's if we know, we can be better.
Absolutely. Being prepared, understanding your individual, those are the two best things you can do to advocate.
Grab your copy of Pathway to Hope Resource Guide for Special Needs on Amazon. It's a roadmap filled with strategies, tools, and encouragement to help your family thrive. So once we've gotten past the paperwork and now we start looking at financial responsibilities, a payee, what is that and what do people need to know?
Okay, so a payee is the person that's going to be responsible for that cash payment. It does not have to be a legal guardian. A payee can just be somebody who is trusted. Now, they will be vetted. Social Security will check to make sure that this individual would be responsible for that income. It'll have to go into a designated account that is monitored. Again, you can look at those identity trusts or any other types of things that have to be paid for. You want to make sure that all of those correct payments are made and that the individual still has things such as a savings and or we always have to remember our kids still like that entertainment. So we want to make sure we keep that budget in there too.
So there's an Office of Disability Determination Services, DDS. I said it.
Yes.
So for DDS, what happens behind the scenes? Once they get the paperwork, what are they looking for? What are they doing?
Okay, so that's the evaluation component to are you eligible? So they're the ones looking at the medical. They may have your medical reviewed by other physicians, other specialists. They will also look at your needs. So that would be, what does this individual have financially? What does this individual have for needs? So that's the group that is making that determination. So that's where you want to making sure they have all your documentation. They have everything ahead of time, because the quicker it goes through them, the quicker you get that good positive response.
And is this also the office that's going to send you a letter and say, we received your information, here's your case manager, here's the number so that you can follow up, or is that somewhere else in the process?
It really depends on the branch. And because this is a nationwide federal program, it can look very different. But every individual that is applying for Social Security, be SSI or SSDI, you do actually have a portal. And having access to that portal is very important. Additionally, you also want to make sure that if you're advocating for someone in that file with Social Security, you see the release for that individual allowing you to advocate for them. Because if not, that individual has to get on there and give that approval. My son, I had the same experience when they were trying to get him to communicate at first. It was not successful. And about 5 minutes into the conversation, the individual said, I now understand, and I will now be speaking with you, Mom.
I love it.
So you want to make sure you don't run into that every time you call.
So what form do you fill out? Families are going to need to know this.
There is a group of forms, and as part of the packet that will be attached to this podcast is I'll have a listing of those forms. The great thing with Social Security is all of their forms are online. They have a specific form for everything. So getting that filled out, putting that in the file, but just, I know from personal experience, it can be a little entertaining, but a little more frustrating to the people on the other end.
So the last question I have is regarding timeline and appeals. What is a typical timeline to get SSI? And if for some reason, and we know 90% of people are denied, you're denied, what is the appeal process?
Okay, so timing can take up to a year. Being very realistic. You cannot get discouraged. It can be as simple as one piece of paper was missing or one evaluation was missing. Don't get discouraged. Just like we teach all of the individuals that we're advocating for, you keep going. It is not what happens to you, it is how you handle it. And that is our family motto, that we make sure that we just keep going with that. Now, important part of the timeline, make sure that you read all of those letters that come in. Save them, because every letter will tell you, we need to hear from you in this amount of time.
And sometimes they do not give you a lot of time. So
Absolutely.
Open it immediately and get going because you don't want to start over.
Right. And sometimes as simple as giving them a call, stating, I need additional time, or I'm recognizing it, or this is what I'm happening. That'll all be documented in the file, and it'll allow you to maintain that single application. Because what most people don't always realize is they pay back to the date of the application.
I was going to ask you to say that because I know how important it is. And I remember telling a family that kept putting it off, put it in, because they're going to, if you put it in October or September, you're going to get paid that month of September, even if it takes a year.
Absolutely. And that money is not for the families. It is for that individual. So that might be saving for an educational program, or it might be saving for a certification, or paying off medical bills.
Or a vehicle so they can go to work as they're trying to go forward.
Absolutely. It's about that independence and giving them that fresh start. And again, you can absolutely find 101 things that they'll absolutely need.
Well, we had a family that we were working with that it took them 14 or 15 months to get it. It was a little longer than the year. And by the time they received it, they had enough money to pay cash for a used vehicle for their child, their young adult who needed transportation.
Absolutely. This money is for the individual's needs. And sometimes parents, they have that guilt feeling, well, I don't necessarily need it, but you have to look at it as it's for that individual and it's for their life. This is looking at attaining support for them that can live with them lifelong.
I think that is one of the most important things we need to really impress upon families. Even if you think you don't need it, still go forward because you just don't know what tomorrow's going to bring.
Absolutely.
Nicole, can you think of anything we may have left out when we're talking about SSI? Anything you want to add?
Don't give up. There's opportunities out there for individuals to get support, to get the scaffolding that they need. And additionally, there's so many different options. Just as your individual is your individual, you are going to want to make sure that you give them everything they are entitled to. Additionally, something that I think is so important, they always have the opportunity to try to come off of Social Security. It is something that I believe passionately about, is that Ticket to Work program, where it's going to give that individual an opportunity to trial work. So definitely give them the opportunity, have that support in there, and make sure that you are absolutely not getting discouraged.
I love it. It's like give them the scaffolding they need to be successful.
Absolutely. That's what we do. We start when they're very little and we just build higher and higher scaffolding. But as they reach adulthood, having that benefit in there is something that's going to be important to pay rent, to pay for food, to pay for medicine, all of these other things that are so vital, that this is going to give them that opportunity to get as much independence as they can.
Nicole, thank you for your time, your wisdom. This is a lot of great information. It's going to help a lot of families.
thank you for having me.
For parents listening, I hope you take away not just the information, but also the encouragement that you are not alone in this. To take the next step, grab your copy of Pathway to Hope Resource Guide for Special Needs on Amazon. It's a roadmap filled with strategies, tools, and encouragement to help your family thrive. And for a personalized roadmap, check out the Hope Recovery Map on our Healing Complex Kids resource page. It guides families step by step with tailored tools and resources. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, where we share more tips, stories, and updates to support you every step of the way. If you found today's episode helpful, please share it with another family who could use some hope. Together, we can make sure no family feels alone in teaching this important information. Thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, progress may be slow, but every step forward matters. And no matter where you are in the journey, there is help, there is support, and there is hope.